Welcome to our top 10 best regiments of renown list. In the number 10, the worst of the best slot is the Sky Striders. Now, this is a list focused around multiplayer. Sky Striders are very expensive. They do good work for themselves. You know, anti-large, armor piercing, frostbite, magic damage, all that stuff. Decent missile resistance with a lot of armor, and then an actual 20% missile resist stat. Fighting against Huntsmen, there are anti-large missiles. We have some swordsmen here in Empire Knights. Now, not a lot of dedicated anti-large, because that would be a little unfair. Just want to show the Sky Striders are pretty darn strong if they aren't directly countered. The Ogre Kingdom's roster does have a lot of healing for them. The reason they fall into number 10 on this list is they're mortal. And I use that in kind of a sarcastic and joking way, but it is that the Sky Striders do eventually get whittled down. They'll usually heal cap before a game is over, but they can be stopped. Even if you aren't an anti-large armor-piercing expert, they do just eventually get whittled down. Though they are fearsome combatants against anything that is not specifically designed to fight them, they will trade up regardless of the circumstance and have pretty good stats overall, so really no one hates the Sky Striders. But in this situation, they're paying for themselves, and I didn't cast any Butchers on them, I didn't cast any Troll Guts or any sort of healing, and they still paid for themselves just fighting it out. So Sky Striders, very, very strong, though they are quite expensive. Spot number 9 is the Exalted Bloodletter of Khorne ROR, the Hellforged Host. Very strong demonic frontline unit for Khorne. Usually taken in any matchup where there's going to be a staunch frontline of armored infantry. With their elite stats, very good bonus versus infantry of 13. As far as infantry goes, that's great, because versus any infantry, they have 65 melee attack. And they do get 5 more melee attack, 20% more damage after getting 40 kills. And they can get 40 kills pretty darn quickly. These guys are rather tenacious little fighters. And something that makes Bloodletters especially good is how perfectly they can saturate a front line. Like, look at them. Only 2 rows of Bloodletters aren't in the fight, while these Storm Vermin, sure, they're slightly stacked up on each other, but there's multiple rows of them that aren't involved in the battle. So even though it's 160 models versus 100, these 100 are all getting involved in that fight and really chopping down against these 2 Storm Vermin who are piled up on each other. Do have a Herald, so I was testing this with some AI. Yeah, Hellforged Host. Cleave through heavily armored infantry. It's everything you want them to be. Their only downsides is that they are expensive and they can be weak to archer fire. Spells, not as much, with their 35% spell resistance and decently large HP pool while having a lower model count. Pretty good stuff for them, so. Hellforged Host, number 9. Very solid unit. Love them. They're great. The number 8 spot for me is the 8 Peak Loonies. Only being 725 gold for an unbreakable frontline unit for the greenskins that constantly applies poison. Even when they're down to 1 model, they'll keep applying that poison. They do have Vanguard deployment and stalks they can use for some sneaky tactics, but also the stalk makes them impossible to target on the advance. So things like the Skaven's mortar teams or Poisonwind Globes can't prepare for them while they're coming. They have to all of a sudden react to the 8 Peak Loons and fire. So can keep those guys safe on the advance, and they're spinning loons. Very, very strong, clearing out front lines. Honestly, it doesn't even need to be an armored front line. Any front line the 8 Peak Loons are against. And that's why pretty much every greenskin build I have, no matter the faction I'm against, has these little guys in there. And 725 really isn't that much to consider. Some of the other regiments for now before, like the Sky Striders and the Hellforged Host, I mean, they're better units, but they also cost... One costs almost 3 times as much. One costs over double the 8 Peak Loons, so... You know, cost does factor in. These guys are cheap, chipper, and always useful. Love the 8 Peak Loons. Alright, so we took a break to talk about the 8 Peak Loons, and now we're back to this replay. Why? Well, our number 9 contestant, the Hellforged Host, is here, cleaving through Storm Vermin like nobody's business, beating the shit out of them, while we talk about our number 7 contestant, the Avalanche Mortars. The Avalanche Mortars are the bane of any heavy infantry in the Skaven matchup. I mean, Skaven have always been fantastic at clearing out elite things, elite infantry, elite cavalry. Their Poisonwind Globes do more than enough work. But one who stands above the rest is the Avalanche Mortars with their superior range and relative tankiness due to only having 12 models. Now, in melee, they aren't that tanky, but like to spells and stuff, Fate of Bino doesn't do as much damage to them as it does to other weapons teams. They have 4,000 HP between 12 models, so they're pretty tanky, but whenever they do decide to fire, they do incredible damage versus cavalry, versus infantry, really anything with over, 40 models. Monstrous infantry counter them and single entities counter them, but they are expensive at 1,500 gold, but they are usually worth it in a matchup where you know you'll need them. Pretty soon they'll get orders to fire on this, but the Hellforged Host, I forgot how long I let them fight, but yeah, the Hellforged Host are 2v1ing Storm Vermin, and they're getting 170 kills, already have the buffs from their Hungering Blades, so they're very, very strong. But in comes the Avalanche Mortars. They'll do a little bit of friendly fire here, but it's all in the name of showing you just how much raw damage they do. Though I'm sure if you've played against Skaven anytime recently, you know just how much damage these guys do. Avalanche Mortars thoroughly saturate an area, dealing a ton of damage, and they have a lot of ammunition too. I've almost never gotten to the end of the game where these guys run out of ammunition. It's always like, you know, they eventually get hunted down or someone gets to them somewhere. But they care not if you're armored or shielded or have magic resistance. Actually, not magic resistance, physical resistance, because they have armor piercing, magic damage, good scatter. Avalanche Mortars are number 7. It's well deserved. They are very, very, very strong. Our number 5 and 6 spots will be sharing a replay here, as we have the Lampe's Revenge in number 5 and the Chosen of the Gods in number 6. So for the Lampe's Revenge, we're currently surrounding Cetra. These are the absolute backbreakers for the Vampire Coast. They're amazing at defending your backline. Their shotguns firing, even while in melee, can do insane damage to single entities of all sizes. They're also very good at clearing out infantry, cavalry, and really whatever you need. The only thing they're weak to is armor-piercing ranged fire, and I guess sitting on top of halberds, though even that can be an even trade, depending on how elite the halberds are. So that is our number 5, currently gooning Cetra the Imperishable. They also have strong regeneration capabilities, really high armor, and they are not cheap, but they're not as expensive as you might think. For the number 6, we went a little out of order there because Lampe's Revenge time came up first, but just behind the Lampe's Revenge is the Chosen of the Gods. Cluster shot Ushabti Great Bows, really good at taking out extremely large single entities, clusters of elite units, enemy cavalry, and in some cases infantry. We'll see here they'll get some shots in Lampe's Revenge and get insane damage down onto those guys as those guys finish off killing Cetra. Chosen of the Gods also not too expensive. You do see them in most Tomb King's builds. They're pretty fast with 54 speed. They can get away from most problems, making them an agile artillery unit. Not as easy to throw like a Kossovite Dervish or an Illyrian Reaver at them and call it done. These guys are rather tanky, high armor, decent melee stats, high speed. Really everything you could want out of a Regiment of Renown. But the reason they are in the number 6 slot and the Lampe's Revenge is in number 5 is because Lampe's Revenge is a little bit more tanky of their own accord, and that healing really helps, but also this. Lampe's Revenge are technically slower than the Chosen of the Gods, and they should be able... The Chosen Gods should be able to kite these guys up, but those shotguns on the back of the Lampe's Revenge move them up into the number 5 spot, and the Chosen of the Gods down to number 6. Lampe's Revenge is just a little more versatile, can do a little more things. In our number 4 slot is everyone's favorite Regiment of Renown. I actually don't know of that many people that hate the Butchers of Kalkengard, but they are number 4. They're very strong. They've been very strong for quite a long time, but insanely high stats, self-regeneration, immune to psychology, and they cause terror, which I guess would also give them immune to psychology. The Butchers of Kalkengard are not messing around. Even fighting anti-large armor-piercing cavalry, they can still trade pretty well. They clear out infantry, they clear out cavalry, they fight single entities, they can kill ranged units relatively quickly. There is really nothing the Butchers of Kalkengard can't do. I don't really think they have weaknesses. I mean, obviously sitting on top of like Phoenix Guard would be a great idea, but yeah, Butchers of Kalkengard, very, very solid. Would kind of consider them overpowered if not for their high price point and 45 armor, which isn't that impressive. I don't know. Also, just in general, there's a lot bigger fish to fry in the game than the Butchers of Kalkengard, and since they're Regiment of Renown, you can only have one of them. It's really not that difficult of a question. So, they're good. They're very good. We'll see them fighting these Orc Borborbiggins, Goblins, and then a Goblin Great Shaman. See how well they do against cavalry, terror out away those boar boys, charge back in, fight the goblins, get rear charged by the boar boys, we even cycle charge me a little bit. But the butchers are tanky, regenerating through it all, fighting back with gusto. They get their blood greed charged up, so getting more melee attack. Nothing stops the butchers from having a good time. I mean, hell, they're even silver shielded, they can handle range. Look at them go! And the final thing is they will surround the goblin Great Shaman and beat his ass. Good job, Butchers. Welcome to number 4. Oh, this is where I stop saying nice things. Alrighty, next up we have another duo replay. Number 3 on the list is Royal Altar of Griffites, and number 2 is the Fireborn. Regiments Renown for the Demigryph Knight Halberds and the Dragon Princes, respectively. For the number 3 slot, Royal Outlaw Gryphites did get a bit of a rework. Now they have Glorious Charge, which doubles their charge duration and gives a leadership penalty, making them very good against low leadership factions for a lot of shock damage. Pretty high stats in general, lots of melee attack, melee defense, incredible weapon strength, anti-large, all that nonsense. Really good damage out from them. We can see they obliterated Silver Helms on the charge, already getting themselves about 800 value and 20 seconds of fighting. So it's pretty good. It's pretty good indeed. Now, across from them, the Fireborn have a lot of the same things you could say about them, but why do I have the Fireborn slightly higher up? Well, let's pull their unit card back up. The Fireborn have 60 models, while the Royal Outlaw Gryphite only have 32. This does mean that the Fireborn can get into more engagements at once and have more models swinging to apply their damage. They're relatively similar weapon strengths. Doing that, fire damage also reduces the healing of their opponents, so if both the Royal Ultra Gryphites and the Fireborn got a regrowth, the Fireborn would get a full strength regrowth while the Royal Ultra Gryphites got half. And considering that usually the High Elves are going to bring healing with them, that is a very useful feature to have in an important cav battle. Other than that, physical resistance and fire resistance helps them against a lot of foes, while the Royal Ultra Gryphites have no resistances, no missile resist, no physical, no spell resist, nothing, so all spells go through on them equally. This also means that for Ultra Gryphites are targeted by artillery, they start losing models quicker, and the Fireborn don't. Well, I mean, they have more models to lose. They can still be effective in the late game and have more models to heal up and all that stuff. So just generally, it's a very close race. Both these units are insanely cracked, but I do give it just a little bit to the Fireborn due to how well they synergize with the healing they are so based on. So, yeah. Both of them are incredibly good, though. Both of them are seen in quite a lot of Empire and High Elf games. There's a reason we see them all the time. You can see I picked Knights of the Blazing Sun just to show off the Fireborn's physical resistance, as they take almost no damage on the countercharge due to that extra resist versus the Knights of the Blazing Sun. But both are crazy, and I can see arguments for either. Like if you want to say Royal Ultra Gryphites are number 2 and Fireborn are number 3, that's a fine argument. I just go the other way. It should surprise no one that our number 1 is the Demon's Tongue. Iron Demon. I put the Iron Demon up in the top left, not Demon's Tongue. Rip. But you get it. It can have the Dreadquake Mortar attached, but that is part of its versatility. It can either be half as expensive and a very strong disruption, single entity, unbreakable chariot that's good versus cavalry and single entities and archers. You can also slap a Dreadquake Mortar on there and make it an insane artillery piece as well. And I don't know if it's a bug or an intended behavior, but the Dreadquake Mortar can also just fire in melee. So when this chariot gets going, it can just shoot at itself and clear out any problems it has. It also has a leadership debuff on its little flamethrower on the front. The flamethrower also fires independently. We can see it has no problems pathing through those spearmen. Terror forces the archers away. This thing is just very, very strong. There goes the Dreadquake Mortar on shot on itself to try and get rid of the Silver Helms. It does unfortunately slow itself with the monstrous impact, so that was rather annoying, but it's still a very strong unit. See it in quite a lot of Chaos Dwarf builds. Can usually pay for itself here, as it's, I think this thing is 3,400 gold with the kit I brought on it. And I brought a High Elf army of roughly the same stuff. We have some heavy cav, we have some spears, we had some archers, but the Dreadquake Mortar is able to quickly clear out the archers, and really ranged fire is the main thing that stops the Demon's Tongue. Mostly. The stuff in melee just tends to get nuked like that. Now, anti-large armor piercing in melee can do a lot better than basic spears and Silver Helms for sure, but they still suffer a lot of damage. Really, range is the only way to take this thing out. And in the next patch, or I suppose by the time this releases the current patch, allegedly there is a fix that cannonballs and luminarc shots and fireballs can't hit this chariot multiple times, and that makes it even harder to kill. Because it used to be, if you had the range damage to kill it, then it was literally worthless, but if you didn't, it could win you an entire game. So yeah, Dreadquake Mortar, Demon's Tongue in general, very, very strong. It's just going to grind through these guys, taking very little damage. Let's see what it ended up with in value. 3,450. I think that had just about paid for itself, and it had no problem sitting in spears that whole time. Roar. Subscribe, yes, yes.